Tonight, a call for safe storage and action after a teenager dies in an accidental shooting.
Yeah, the community is grieving again just days after another student was shot and killed.
Experts just told Adriana de Alba these kinds of tragedies are preventable.
It was a tragic loss of life, but one Fort Worth police say is happening far too often.
We're seeing far too many young people having access to guns.
A 16-year-old shot and killed in an apartment on South Hewlin on Easter Sunday. The Tarrant County Medical Examiner identifying him as Jaden Jones. Investigators say another 16-year-old fired a gun on accident, striking Jones in the chest. Off camera, the alleged suspect's family told me the two had been best friends since 6th grade.
Well, it hit me pretty hard this morning when I came into school.
Educator Johnny Cook Muhammad says students are grieving not just this loss, but another just days earlier. 15-year-old Prince Washington was killed in a drive-by shooting in his own South Fort Worth home.
Because our children are thinking this is normal. And it's not normal.
Back in the ER, doctors see the consequences firsthand.
These things are preventable.
Dr. Daniel Guzman treats gunshot victims and says safe storage can save lives. He's part of the Aim for Safety program at Cook Children's Medical Center, focused on getting those tools into the community.
You do this for a long time, you kind of realize the importance of being proactive, but that these children and these individuals aren't just numbers, right? You can, at the end of the day, somebody may look at them, that's another statistic. But for me, it's another child.
This time, investigators say it was an accident. And while it's unclear where the gun came from, experts and police agree when violence involves kids.
Making sure that we have we limit access to firearms. I think that's number one right there.
Before another life is lost. In Fort Worth, I'm Adriana de Alba.
Midlothian police tell us an 11-year-old girl was just released from the hospital after being shot by her own father. She was wounded Sunday at a home on Brook Meadow Drive. Police say 37-year-old Mark Ninehouse came to the house and started an altercation with family members. They say he got a handgun from his truck and fired several shots, one of which hit his 11-year-old daughter in the leg. That's when Ninehouse's son confronted his father with a rifle and they exchanged gunshots in the front yard. No one was hit, but the bullets damaged several homes and nearby vehicles. Investigators say when officers arrived, Ninehouse stabbed himself in the neck with a knife. Paramedics took him to the hospital for treatment. Ninehouse faces several charges, included aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, a first-degree felony.
Well, the Dallas Stars say they've indefinitely banned one fan from the arena after making a hateful gesture. This video from the Dallas Stars game in December just went viral. A group of fans do what appears to be a Nazi salute after the Stars scored a goal. We blurred the men's faces because they haven't been charged with a crime, and we haven't been able to speak with them about the gesture. The Stars tell us they found out who bought the tickets, and that person has been banned from all events at the AAC.
24 hours from now, a massive bombing campaign could be underway in Iran. President Trump says his ultimatum still stands, that he will take out critical infrastructure if no deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz is in place by Tuesday night. Teresa Woodard is in the newsroom tonight, keeping a close eye on the White House for us. Teresa?
Cynthia, get ready for a critical 24 hours. President Trump says if there is no deal with Iran by 7 p.m. our time tomorrow, the U.S. will launch a massive attack on Iran's bridges and power plants, taking it back, quote, to the Stone Age. President Trump said today the attack would be a 4-hour blitz. Since the war began in February, the president has repeatedly pushed back several deadlines for Iran to make a deal, but he indicated tomorrow is the final one. He said a deal must include opening the Strait of Hormuz, that critical waterway that so much of the world's oil moves through. The president said his next step depends on Iran's next move.
The entire country can be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night. We have a plan, because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again.
Iran's top leaders promised to, quote, react in kind if the U.S. carries out this plan. Reporters did ask the president if attacks on civilian infrastructure like bridges and power plants could be considered war crimes. The president said, you know what's a war crime? Having a nuclear weapon. Also tonight, ABC News says the Air Force colonel rescued this weekend after his plane was shot down in Iran is going to be okay. Tonight, we know he had to scale a mountain while bleeding to find a place to hide. The CIA launched a major deception campaign to confuse Iran about where he was, and it worked.
Our intelligence reflects that the Iranians were embarrassed and ultimately humiliated by the success of this audacious rescue mission.
Now remember, John Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA you just heard from, was once mayor of the city of Heath, and he represented Northeast Texas in Congress. Today, Iran rejected a proposed deal drafted by mediators like Turkey and Egypt. The U.S. then rejected Iran's counterproposal. All of this happening as that deadline inches closer. Cynthia, Chris?
All right. Thank you, Teresa. Well, tonight, NASA is sharing new images from Artemis 2's historic lunar mission.
Yeah, the 4 astronauts are the first humans to see areas of the far side of the moon with their own eyes, and they've now traveled farther from Earth than anyone, more than 250,000 miles. The crew sent new images showing the moon's surface in detail. Some taken by the Orion spacecraft's 15 mounted cameras, others snapped by the crew members themselves. NASA expected to lose contact with the astronauts for about 40 minutes as they passed behind the moon, but quickly reestablished communication. They're now on a slingshot path to Earth and should splash down Friday.
Looking ahead to tomorrow, a Hood County community will get a chance to learn more about a plan to rezone 2,100 acres for a data center power plant. The plan to develop land off Highway 377 in Granbury has been a point of contention for an area at the center of a North Texas data center boom. Some residents say they don't want the data centers due to the possibility of health risks, noise, and a potential hit to property values. The city council is trying to address some of those concerns, but leaders already approved a request to annex the land. The meeting is tomorrow night at City Hall. This is a growing debate. It grows in counties across the state. And on Thursday at the state capitol, a House committee will hold a meeting on data center development. The agenda shows a number of CEOs from data companies, as well as the president of ERCOT, scheduled to take part.
Athena Strand's family has been waiting several years for this moment since she disappeared from her home. The man accused of killing her goes on trial tomorrow and could face the death penalty. Senior investigative reporter Tanya Iser shows us how it could play out in court.
This is the face prosecutors want jurors to see and never forget. Athena Strand, a little girl taken too soon. And this is the face of the man they say is responsible. Tanner Horner, the man they want to put on Texas's death row.
I think it's a huge responsibility to ask people to determine whether or not a person should live or die.
Horner goes on trial in Tarrant County more than 3 years after Athena's disappearance and killing shocked North Texas. A judge moved the case from Wise County because of concerns Horner might not receive a fair trial there. The judge has also issued a gag order preventing prosecutors and defense attorneys from speaking publicly. Horner drove a contract delivery truck for FedEx. Investigators say Athena was playing in her front yard on November 30th, 2022, when he arrived with a package. Police say Horner later confessed, telling investigators he hit the 7-year-old with his delivery van and kidnapped her because he feared she would tell her father. He told police he strangled her and dumped her body in rural Wise County, later leading investigators to where she was found.
Facts are horrible.
It's like a parent's worst nightmare.
It is definitely a parent's worst nightmare.
In court filings, Horner's attorneys argue prosecutors should not be allowed to seek the death penalty, saying his autism reduces what they call his moral blameworthiness. They are also asking the judge to throw out his confession, arguing that because of his autism, he did not knowingly or voluntarily waive his right against self-incrimination.
The science is pretty clear that autism is real, that autism affects people in profound ways. And some people who are autistic reach the level of disability, that they don't understand their actions. Whether it is enough to help the defense in this case is largely going to depend on how severe that autism spectrum disorder is.
North Texas attorneys Terry Bentley Hill and Mike Howard say death penalty cases follow a very different process from the typical trial. That difference touches every part of the process, from jury selection to how lawyers present the case, to the life and death questions jurors must ultimately answer. If jurors find Horner guilty of capital murder, the trial moves to the punishment phase.
And the rules are that they have 2 questions to answer. They call them special issues questions.
First, jurors must decide whether Horner would be a future danger to society. If all jurors say yes, they move to a second question. Is there anything in his background that should spare him from the death penalty? If all jurors say no, he is sentenced to death. If it's not unanimous, the sentence becomes life without parole.
It's going to be a battle of the experts. The defense is going to bring in their experts to try to convince the jury that this man had a mental impairment, that he's not the worst of the worst.
How disabled is this person? How much did they understand their actions?
And that question only comes into play if jurors first convict Tanner Horner of capital murder. If they do, their answers will determine whether he spends the rest of his life in prison or is sentenced to die for the killing of Athena Strand. I'm senior investigative reporter Tanya Iser, WFAA News.
Join us for gavel-to-gavel coverage of the trial on WFAA+. Legal experts will join Tanya to break down testimony each day. Download our free streaming app to your TV and start watching tomorrow at 8:30 a.m.